Hello, everybody, and welcome to Responsible AI in Action by the Responsible AI Institute, where we are talking with leading experts in responsible AI. I'm very excited. We have Phil Dawson, the head of AI policy from Armilla AI, joining us today. Phil, thanks so much for being here.
Hi, Patrick. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
It's been so wonderful getting the opportunity to learn more about you and your leadership in this space, what you're doing at Armilla as well, and all the incredible work that you're doing in this space. We're seeing AI and responsible AI. A lot of times it's just difficult to keep up with everything that's happening. It's always wonderful to be able to check in with one another in the space and to know what's happening, what's going on, keeping up with all the latest changes and developments. And so it's great to have a leader like yourself to be able to talk with and collaborate with. So it's great to have you on the show and to feature you in this capacity.
Thanks, Patrick. And the feeling's mutual at Armilla. We know that reaching out to Responsible AI Institute and the colleagues we have there, you're really right across the team that we're talking to people who are living and breathing this stuff every day and in other sectors where we spend a little less time. So that's kind of part of the fun of being, I think, an AI policy in general.
No, absolutely. So I always love to start these conversations by learning a little bit about your background and what led you on to this responsible AI journey that you're on today.
Yeah, sure. So it's been an interesting journey for me, and it seems a little bit circuitous, but there's a kind of a common thread. I began my career as a lawyer. I worked in litigation, commercial litigation, with a focus on highly regulated industries, but quickly moved into a policy role at a UN organization, the UN Aviation Safety Agency, which is called the International Civil Aviation Organization, and worked for a number of years at the intersection of standardization, certification of small unmanned aircraft systems and large unmanned aircraft systems or drones. That was my first kind of experience working at a global level with, at the time, 192 countries, international trade associations, some research and civil society organizations, nonprofits, industry. And yeah, trying to identify common topics and priorities that warranted discussion and some type of policy solution or standardization solution that could help the industry succeed and at the same time ensure that safety remained a priority. And so that was really interesting for me. I spent more and more time trying to understand industry, what some of these companies, startups included, were building in terms of solutions, the performance and capabilities of these solutions, whether they were the drones themselves or air traffic management software for drones. The focus really was on at the performance and capabilities of these systems, trying to measure them and design risk management and governance frameworks for the various actors in the space. So super interesting. Automation, autonomy was a topic of conversation throughout, and specifically the impacts on safety. How do you demonstrate the safety of these operations? That kind of led me into the AI industry, which was 2016, 2017, kind of, I think, experiencing its first zeitgeist or wave of hype. There's been a few hype cycles since then. There have been some recent breakthroughs. Some companies like DeepMind and OpenAI were becoming more prominent. There's some companies in Canada as well. One was called Element.AI, and I became very interested in the AI space and ultimately joined that company, Element.AI, on the policy team. And we got to, I think, we were very involved in some of the first and foundational AI policy initiatives, the OECD and the EU, and its standards developments. I've been in this ever since. That's the last 5 or 6 years, and I've seen a lot of changes, but there's a lot of common conversations I think that we're still having. Everything is more specific, more granular, more oriented to practice for sure. But the conversations about the balances between or evaluating the benefits and opportunities against the risks of AI systems, I guess the goals are the same. And then the conversations become much more specific and practical and applied. So it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible just hearing about your past experience And as you were saying, getting into the AI space in around 2016, 2017, and just how far we've come since then. And that's like a relatively short period of time in the grand scheme of things. And so I know for myself, it's this thought process of, okay, if we've come that far in the last 7, 8 years, what are the next 7 to 8 years going to look like? And it's exciting. And at the same time, it's important to put those measures into place and to lay those foundations. Of course, we have this executive order that came out recently about the protection of personal data. But then also several months ago, we had the one come out about AI safety. And so I'd love to hear your perspective on that. What have you seen with regards to the outcomes of that executive order? How are people responding? How is Armilla responding to this? And how can we best implement this various regulation that's coming out?
Yeah, great question, Patrick. I'll maybe provide some comments on the most recent executive order on the protection of sensitive data, and then kind of tie it back to artificial intelligence and the executive order on safe, secure, and trustworthy AI. The one last week or almost 2 weeks ago, the executive order on the protection of sensitive data. Look, I think it's just another piece of evidence that the White House is taking the risks of the digital economy writ large, AI as well, very seriously, and instituting new measures to ensure that so-called countries of concern, and there's a few that are listed, and that ensuring that these countries cannot obtain the personal information generated about Americans in the U.S. Cannot obtain this, both to protect them, protect privacy considerations, and also national security consideration. This is sensitive information about individuals, but in the wrong hands, I think in the wrong hands, it's data that could be used for a number of nefarious purposes. And there are some national security concerns that the government has. I think it's also probably part of ensuring that these same countries don't have access to data about Americans that can be used to train AI systems. I think there's probably competitive geopolitical aspect to this, and in terms of safeguarding the competitiveness of the American AI industry. But I think that there's also another safety and security issue there in terms of using this data to train potentially threatening AI systems from a national security or safety standpoint. I think that the Biden administration is clearly very serious about potential risks of data finding its way into the wrong hands and the AI systems that can be developed as a result. And going back to the executive order on safe, secure, and trustworthy AI, which was really groundbreaking news in the fall. For me, there was a lot of talk about it at the time. And I remember, I wouldn't say that I was underwhelmed, but when you're looking at, legislation in the EU and in Brazil and in Canada and other places, a number of states in the United States as well, then you're coming to this kind of sweeping policy document. It's kind of hard to gauge, one, how swiftly some of this might be implemented and then become more concrete, and what will turn into some type of binding, a series of binding requirements. So that wasn't really very obvious from when the executive order was first released, but I've been pretty surprised, and I guess also impressed at the speed of implementation of some of the commitments there. So one, there's already been an act proposed to require federal agencies in the US to implement risk management processes compatible with the NIST AI risk management framework. There has been the setting up of the AI Safety Institute. There has been investments into NIST and work happening to translate the NIST AI RMF to generative AI. The NTIA has already launched its call for an RFI on the benefits and challenges of open weight foundation models. There's been a flurry of follow-up from various government agencies focused really on making sure that in the first place, governments and government agencies in the US implementing responsible AI risk management and governance practices, which will have a huge effect on the industry. At Armilla, we're more and more focused on the insurance industry. We have partners in the insurance industry. We're being asked by vendors of AI writing and pricing solutions about our assessment work, about our warranties, and the carriers themselves about risk management practices and testing third-party models that they're buying. And this is because there are regulators at the state level that have introduced model bulletins on the use of AI. And increasingly, many of these are referencing the NIST AI risk management framework. So to me, I see that as a direct consequence of federal policy, both in its support of NIST's AI work over the last couple of years. But I think, again, with the executive order, it's really made this framework very important. And so much so that regulators are basing guidance in different sectors on it.
I feel like only more and more regulation that's going to come out that's going to hopefully help guide the work of various companies, organizations, industries as well. I'm very curious to see how it evolves. Phil, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to join us on the show today. I not only appreciate you taking the time, but also really appreciate your work and your commitment to responsible AI work. That really shines bright in the way that you speak about the work that you're doing. And so I can't thank you enough for joining us. Before we sign off, I'm wondering if you could just share with our listeners where they could find out more information about you, Armilla, and all the work that you're doing.
Sure. If you want to find more about me, you can find me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. Feel free to add me and send me a message. And Armilla, our website is armilla.ai. Come check us out, and we'll be happy to chat with you.
Great. Well, hey, I'll make sure to include those links in our show description. So for all of our viewers out there, all you have to do is scroll down, click those various resources provided. Phil, thank you so much again for joining.
Thanks, Patrick.